Hello everyone, thanks for joining us on this edition of The Inside on Équinoxe Television. We are broadcasting from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. I am Babla Jonathan. In this edition of the program, we're going to talk about ongoing discussions between the government of the Republic of Cameroon and some separatist leaders detained in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé. This week, some of the leaders met with some top officials in Catholic institutions in Yaoundé, during which they discussed some issues related to a possible ceasefire in the northwest and southwest regions of the country after the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution calling for a global ceasefire, notably within the context of the fight against the coronavirus. We'll be taking a look at that in this edition of the program. We'll also be talking about the reconstruction plan for the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Paul Tasson, Minister Delegate at the Ministry of Economic Planning and Regional Development and leader of the reconstruction plan, and his collaborator, former mayor of Kumbunjong, Donatus, have just rounded up a mission to the northwest and southwest regions of the country. For 2 weeks, they were meeting with administrative, civil society, political, religious, and even traditional authorities and other stakeholders, striving to pave a way forward for the reconstruction of the two Anglophone regions, which has as main objective, according to Paul Tasson, to fast-track the return to peace and normalcy. But there are questions on that reconstruction plan. We'll be talking about that with our guest in some few seconds. Thanks for joining us today. Our first guest is a legal mind. Barrister Tamfu Richard is a member of the Cameroon and Nigerian Bar Associations. Barrister, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Babila. The pleasure is all mine.
And also joining us from Washington, D.C., United States of America, Foncha Marshall Foncha, who is the chairperson of the New Africa Coalition Front and ex-separatist leader. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Babila. It's my pleasure to be on your platform once more.
All right, I'm going to begin with you. This week, some separatist leaders detained in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, met with some top officials of the government to discuss the Anglophone crisis. And according to one of the leaders, Tassan Wilfred, this is the second of such meetings, which he has, however, continued refusing to attend because he thinks that it is not going to produce any fruit with regards to the situation on the ground. What do you think about this closure, this gap that is gradually closing up between the government and the separatist leaders?
Thank you, Mr. Babila. Once more, this is a very important question, but there's something here that before we begin this discussion, there's something that I want to make very clear to the people of Cameroon, all the 10 regions of that country. The crisis we are facing today, it's no longer a Cameroon government versus Anglophone crisis. It's a Cameroonian socio-economic, cultural and political crisis that every single Cameroonian from all the 10 regions have a say about what Cameroon is going to become in the future. So, directly to your question about Mr. Tassan and Mr. Ayub Tabe having some difficulties in seeing eye to eye on which direction to take to try to accept a ceasefire in Cameroon, we must understand that there has always been animosity within the secessionist movement itself. The fighting for leadership position in the secessionist movement is across the board. And with that said, within that leadership, that is Nkundengi, Tabe Julius and Tassan Wilfred and all, they have factions outside that are controlling the narratives on what they got to do with the government.
The question is not about the animosity or whatever between Tassan Wilfred and Tsisiku Ayuk-Tabe. Both of them, however, did not take part in those meetings. Tassan has continued to refuse to take part in such meetings. But I'm talking about the meeting between some of the separatist leaders who are detained in Yaoundé and some government officials. What do you think about such a meeting? What can come out of such a meeting?
Well, first of all, I think that's the right step, and we welcome such a meeting. Within the New Africa Coalition Front, I've made statements that we welcome such a meeting because at this point, taking into consideration the United Nations COVID-19 pandemic advisory, we cannot be putting our people in the Southwest and Northwest region, our civilian population, in tremendous hardship, especially at this time. This call for ceasefire has been made several times by the international organizations and the United Nations. This is a humanitarian call for ceasefire, and I think anybody who is against such a meeting is a warmonger trying to achieve objectives that they will never meet. In the meantime, our people are the ones who are bearing the brunt on the ground and dying every day. So I think the meeting, we agree with those of them that attend this meeting, because at the end of the day, we have to sit and talk to find a solution to this crisis. We cannot just be in our various corners and say we can't hold no meetings. These meetings have to take place within the Cameroon, within the territory of Cameroon. Where Tassan should not be expecting that this meeting to talk about ceasefire should be held in Switzerland or should be held in America or in Britain. No, they are in Cameroon, and if the government wants to talk to them, I think it's the right step, because we have to understand our people are dying every second on the ground. So every opportunity that we can sit and talk about peace, I think it's an opportunity that we should grab it, because we are all Cameroonians. Those government officials, they are not from Pluto, they are not from Jupiter. Those government officials who met with them, they are also Cameroonians. And this problem is a Cameroonian problem, not a government versus Anglophone problem. We have to understand that it's our people who are dying every day, Mr. Babila.
All right, I'll come back to you in a short while, Marshal. Barrister Tamfu Richard, Marshal Foncha thinks that is the right step, that meeting between some separatist leaders and some government authorities in Yaoundé is the right step. That's the right direction as far as the efforts to take us back to a normal situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the country are concerned. What do you think about that?
Yes, I join same view with what Marshall is saying, because you agree with me that this crisis is lasting for close to 4 years now, and it will be devilish for any person to put a halt or a stop or infringe on all the possible out facets of this crisis. The steps which the government has taken to embrace dialogue, which some of us and maybe international organizations have been clamoring from the very beginning of this crisis, that we think that only dialogue can settle the issues between the two fighters. So the government's action to bring in the separatist leaders on a discussion table, to me, is salutary, and we should encourage such. Though I may think that it is coming a bit late, because had it been this initiative was taken from the very first days that Tsisiku Ayuk-Tabe was arrested, my objectives or my reasoning will have been that solutions will be gotten very fast. But I'm a little bit in fear, because with the long delay with the people in detentions, other fractions have radicalized, and I don't believe that Tsisiku Ayuk still has a mastery of the people on the ground. Don't be surprised to see, you rightly said that Tapang Ivo has not been attending some of the meetings. I think those are some of the reasons, because not only Tapang Ivo, you see that even some... Tassan Wilfred, exactly. You see that even some people in the diaspora, are in refusal of such meeting, and but well, that shouldn't be our point of view. All we want is that peace should return to Cameroon as it used to be. Our people on the ground are suffering too much. So we should instead encourage such initiatives from the Cameroon government. However, I am still to really have the official version of the government, because many things are still being remote. I still have some reserve vis-a-vis what is ongoing in Yaoundé.
But Wilfred Tassan, who is one of the separatist leaders, thinks that meeting cannot yield the desired fruits. according to what he thinks, prisoners should not be negotiating. People cannot be negotiating in chains, in detention. That is why Sisiku Ayuk Tabe has put out some preconditions. All those arrested within the context of the Anglophone crisis should be released first. General amnesty should be granted to all separatists who are in and out of the country, and of course the demilitarization of the two Anglophone regions of the country. The military, the soldiers should return to their barracks.
Yes, Tassan should rethink his position, because for dialogue to properly begin, I think there should be some consultations between both parties. And him staying behind is not helping in the cause of seeking peace. I think if Sisiku Ayuk has given himself to this dialogue opportunity, is because he thinks that for a genuine dialogue to really take place, there are some preconditions that have to be respected. Like Riley said, a complete release of all arrested Anglophones within this crisis, and granting maybe general amnesties to those who are on exile, because as the crisis stands today, we have so many fractions. We have those who are in Cameroon, we have those who are in the diaspora, which we should not neglect, and we have those people who have not even yet given their mandate to people to represent them. I think there is still much work that has to be done within the Northwest or the Southwest region to really know who are the people who can actually represent them on any discussion table. And I think that the part which Sisiku Ayuk is taking in embracing dialogue is the right path, which should be encouraged. I believe that he in his tweet that I read, he said things are on preparation, and that when things will be concrete, he's going to tell the people of Southern Cameroon. So I think, to me, the steps taken by Ayuk Sisiku should be welcomed, and people either be in the diaspora or whosoever should encourage, because all we want at the end of the day is that peace should return in the Northwest and Southwest.
Marshal Foncha, you're an ex-separatist leader who decamped, I want to put it that way. Do you think that it's going to be possible for any concrete negotiation that can resolve this crisis to be done while those who are negotiating are still in detention?
Well, Mr. Babila, we are not seeking for this crisis to be negotiated with people who are in chains or people who are incarcerated. But we must understand that when you begin the pre-talks, you set your conditions for the pre-talks. It doesn't necessarily mean that the government will automatically go and release the prisoners or those who are incarcerated to start to begin a pre-talk. A pre-talk is to set a condition for a dialogue or for a negotiation. And remember, we, the New African Coalition Fund, we have a different view of we are of the opinion that a non-consensus first amongst themselves, separatists, the political parties that exist within the Southwest Province, the traditional councils like Soela that's headed by I think was the Chief Emeritus from Victor Mukete, and in the Northwest Province, the chiefs and all the traditional organizations, they deal consensus and they decide on how to represent themselves in any future national conference. And we are also encouraging the people from all the other 8 regions to build this consensus, because, as we say again, this is a Cameroon problem, a Cameroon crisis. It's not a government versus Southwest and Northwest crisis. We have to determine the future of Cameroon, and I think every Cameroonian citizen from all the 10 regions have the right to a voice in this matter. So the people in the Southwest Province, if Sisiku Tabe wants to be on the table on a negotiation table, I commend him for doing that, but he has to consult with all the organizations within the Southwest Province, build consensus. Likewise, Mr. Tassan can do the same thing for the Northwest. We cannot go into this negotiation expecting that Sisiku Tabe Julius or Mr. Tassan is going to go and represent all the people in the Southwest and Northwest Province. Then Mr. Ayaba will still be there talking about war councils like what he saying yesterday. Mr. Akwanga will be there talking about war councils. We can't do that. We have to have constituency representation in order to go into negotiation. So what Sissoko Tabe is doing today now is just setting the conditions for a pre-talks. And that pre-talks don't necessarily mean that he's going to be the one to go and sit and negotiate for all people from the Southwest and Northwest province. He is setting the condition. I have had meetings also with some members of the government who we have discussed about this. So we cannot look at this matter anymore as Cameroon government versus Anglophones. No, it's a Cameroon crisis. And Mr. Tabe Julius, we are welcoming his gesture to sit, even though he's incarcerated, to start talking about these issues. And the next now,
between government and the separatist leaders, but with everybody, practically everybody will certainly agree with you that all Cameroonians, all Anglophones have a voice in this. But there are some who are standing for cessation, who are standing for the real cause of this problem that has killed so many people in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. And there was a discussion that took place, the major national dialogue, and these people were not represented. These people were not there. And some political civil society leaders are thinking that the dialogue has failed. They are saying that the dialogue has failed because these people were not on the dialogue table. So you are saying that the discussion should not be between government and the separatist leaders. How do you think that can work?
Well, Mr. Babila, you have to understand, yes. The dialogue, the grand national dialogue that was called by the government, there is one good thing that came out of it. That grand national dialogue was the blatant acceptance by the government of Cameroon and all Cameroonians that indeed Cameroon has a socio-economic, cultural, and political crisis. And this crisis did not start 4 years ago. This socio-economic and political crisis that exists in Cameroon today began with the colonization of Cameroon by France and England. That created the identity crisis that we embody today in Cameroon as Francophones, and that we have realized that our problem actually the basis of our problem is identity crisis from France and England. We have to come together as Africans to seek common solutions that will help us. That is why we are pushing for a grand national conference, because the first dialogue did not succeed because the outline, we did not understand what we were going for in that dialogue. But today, I think there is much understanding all across the country, because I'm speaking to my compatriots, my friends from the south, from the center, from the Novo stations. You have to give and take. You have to leave your position, come to the middle. The other person leave their position and come to the middle. So anybody who is thinking that they will stay on their corner and set secession forever until everybody die, it's never gonna work. And we must understand this. The direction that the continent is moving, a British form of state, which was Southern Cameroon or West Cameroon. As I said, Mr. Babila, there is no Southern Cameroon in Cameroon anymore. There is no West Cameroon in Cameroon anymore. It's Cameroon, and we can decide the future form of state and governance in Cameroon, and that is something that every single Cameroonian
can
in
decide
all the
everything.
Have a voice.
We can decide everything in Cameroon. Barrister, Foncha is talking about a national conference, another major national dialogue
that just took place in around September last year. I was one of those advocating that that was not the proper thing to do, because it had embraced the Anglophone crisis to be a national issue and has diluted in looking for solutions into the Anglophone crisis. I think I will differ with a little bit with Marshall, because if we have to be able to
refer to as terrorists.
Yes, they have to talk with them, because at first they used to say they will not dialogue with terrorists. I think that was the biggest mistake, and that is how they went in for the grand national dialogue. Grand national dialogue was taken, but it wasn't invited. So I think, to me, let's do, if today we are on the same footing that we want to hit to the UN call for a global ceasefire and looking for peaceful solution into this crisis, it is time for us to identify who are the potential leaders or who are the fractions in this crisis between the government of Cameroon and the separatist fighters. Once we are able to identify all those fractions, we will now have to do another work, which is, are these people that we have identified truly represent the people between these two regions? Once we are able to do that, we now say, okay, to facilitate things or to appease the people, let's release the leaders who are incarcerated and some of the Anglophones or everybody that was arrested within the crisis. I think once you have done that, it is going to appease the people. And even though it comes to restart back life, and then now from there, you can go in for a referendum to permit them actually determine those who will speak for them. Because today, I don't expect, today some fraction will tell you that no matter what Ayuk Tabe does or says, it doesn't bind them. You have some extremists who are still there saying that no, it is war or till, but we can't continue in this war everlasting. Those who are agitating for the war are outside. For 4 years today, they are living well. Their children are going to school. But those who are on ground zero, or the people who are here, for 4 years today, they have been living a miserable life. Their children are not able to go to school, or the day they arrested him. Because the very first day they arrested Sissoko Ayuk Tabe, he still had the monopoly over the Anglophone crisis. They could have used him, tell him that, okay, please talk to your people.
Those conditions, those preconditions highlighted by Sissoko Ayuk Tabe, do you see those conditions coming up anytime? The liberation of all those who have been detained, general amnesty, demilitarization?
It's in our extremism or in our extreme end, thinking that we'll have solution. When this crisis started, you saw people having peace plans. They neglected it. People went for guns. The people who have the guns today, when it started, you saw them having them guns, those traditional guns. But today, you see people having whether it's A47 or whatsoever. You see them having sophisticated guns. You think that it's easy for you to just take them, tell them that, okay, drop those guns. If you don't have to come down from your ladder. I think if actually we are out for peace, this peace has no price. There is nothing wrong for the government in saying that, okay, we release Ayuk or release all the persons who have been arrested. Use them to try and break through with the other extremist leaders who are outside and just trying to put more fire on it. I think if truly the government of Cameroon is serious, there is no price to this peace. And I believe, and I still believe that if truly we are serious, there is still something that can be done. And it is better we act now than to continue into this crisis, because I don't see any of the camps winning it in the nearest close future.
All right, Marshal Foncha, can the liberation of all those who have been arrested and detained within the context of the Anglophone crisis and general amnesty and of course demilitarization of the two Anglophone regions of the country pave the way forward?
Yes, I will start first by making something very clear here. The last Grand National Dialogue was not fully participated, or those in the diaspora that were giving invitations, they were giving invitations without any international diplomatic cover. For example, if you want to get myself, or you want to get Cho Ayaba Lucas or Mark Barata or whoever, or Sako Samuel to come to Yaoundé for a Grand National Dialogue, you don't just send them an invitation after 4 years of war and think they will just catch Air Afrique or Air France and fly to Yaoundé. No, it doesn't work like that. Let's take it from the American playbook. In Afghanistan, when the Taliban were fighting against the United States, and fighting Mullah Omar and the government of Afghanistan, what happened? They had a national conference, not once, but 3 times. So if the first Grand National Dialogue failed because of lack of trust, we have learned from it. But we all know that the government and everybody in Cameroon have learned also from it and accepted that we have a problem. So I don't see any reason why the government cannot extend this invitation with some United Nations diplomatic guarantee attached to it, that those amongst us who live in the diaspora can come to Cameroon and sit in our ancestral homeland and solve this crisis. And if they want to stay in the country, or if they want to go back to their adopted countries around the world, they are free to go. This will be an international cover for them. You cannot just take a mere invitation signed by somebody in Yaoundé that you don't even know. their intentions or their objectives and send to somebody in the diaspora that come to Cameroon. That was the mistake they made. For example, if I have to come to Cameroon for a Grand National Dialogue, I'm a Cameroonian born and a child. I am an American citizen. I have to brief the United States State Department for African Affairs that I am going on a peace mission to bring peace back in my ancestral homeland. So I will expect a letter from the Cameroon government that this letter, the Cameroon government will give me certain guarantees, diplomatic cover, that I will not be arrested. I will take this letter to the State Department and show them that this is an official document from the Cameroon government that they are calling me to come back to my ancestral homeland to bring peace. And I can certainly tell you, Mr. Babila and Barrister, that the American government will be 100% in agreement for me to go, because as the barrister said, peace has no price. Even the United States government foreign policy objective for Africa is particularly for Cameroon. The US foreign policy objectives is very clear. They want a one and indivisible federal Cameroon. I know this. I read the briefs. They want a cultural federation. They don't want the country to split up, but they want people to achieve the right stabilization. So we must understand demilitarizing the Southwest and Northwest. It's not that difficult. The government is going about it the wrong way. For example, they have something called the DDRO Center, that they ask the guys, drop your gun, you go to the DDRO Center. Now, but we have to understand something like Minister Paul Tasson said on Equinoxe yesterday when he was being interviewed in the Pidgin English. He said something very profound, and I agree with Minister Paul Tasson. The reconstruction and all these things is not only about material building, but is the developing the human capacity amongst those of them who are still carrying guns in the bushes. And that is some of the projects that we in the New Africa Coalition Front are doing, by trying to build human capacity, take them out of the bushes, give them capacity.
We will talk about reconstruction.
Idea on the future of the country. So we cannot just come and say, come to Cameroon or Dimitra. It doesn't work by mouth. It has to be matched by actions.
We will talk about reconstruction. We will talk about reconstruction in a short while. You said demilitarizing the two Anglophone regions of the country is not a difficult thing, but government is going about it the wrong way. Government is saying that it's not possible to ask the military to go back to their barracks, because they have to be there to protect the people. They have to protect the territorial integrity of Cameroon. And you're saying that it's not easy it's not a difficult thing to demilitarize the two regions. And as we are speaking now, there is a military crackdown that is going on. The last was in Gokutunja and Bui divisions, where over 17 separatist fighters were killed.
But Mr. Babila, you have to accept, you have to agree with me. It does not work by sending more firepower in there. You radicalize the people even more. In Syria, it's not working. In Iraq, when you have al-Baghdadi, you had all these people, it did not work. In Afghanistan, the fighting in Kandahar, in Tora Bora, it's not working. In Yemen, it's not working. So we have to look for an alternative solution to solve this problem. And the alternative solution to solve this problem, I myself and my council, we have presented it to the government that there is a way to peacefully extract and isolate and give these guys who are carrying guns in the bushes a new ideology and build their capacity in a way that they will rather look to engage to solve the problem alternatively. But just sending the military in there, I guarantee you the military will succeed to a certain degree, but the military will not completely demilitarize the area. It's not going to be firepower continuously. Because we have to understand something here, Mr. Babina.
I'll come back.
Our people are the ones dying. Our people are the ones dying. The civilians, the women, the children, they are the ones dying. Why the military is there? Why the radical and the secessionist fighters are there? So not all the secessionist fighters, catch and kill, will never work. Catch and kill will only achieve its objective to a certain degree. And if you sit here, Mr. Babila, and tell me that the catch and kill policy that the government and some of the military factions are doing there is gonna demilitarize the two regions, I don't think it will succeed. But I think it's easier to actually
it's
easy to pinpoint these particular people who are causing trouble in there, find a way to extract them isolate them and give them a different vision. I think that will work even far better than going in with guns and radicalizing more of the young men, because we have people talking about war councils in Sweden. We have people talking about war drafts in Maryland. All this money they are collecting is to buy more guns.
All right, French, will come back to you in a short while. Barrister, you all agree on the point that the discussions going on between some of the separatist leaders and the government is a good step. That's the good direction, but there is a stumbling block somewhere that is practically hindering every move. That's the right direction. That's restoring peace and normalcy in those two regions. There is a statement in Ayuk Tabe's tweet. I quote, he says, "Be reassured that we remain committed to the restoration of the independence of homeland." That is where there is a point of contention. Government is saying Cameroon is one and indivisible, and Ayuk Tabe and the others are saying we have to restore the independence of the former southern Cameroons. How to reconcile these two positions?
You see, if, for example, this exchange or this dialogue was done in public, it was mediatized. It is true, both parties have their positions. Ayuk says he wants to restore the independence of southern Cameroon. The government of Cameroon says we are one and indivisible. Both parties have their extreme ends. But it doesn't mean that if after a good discussion, they can come on the table and maybe take a federal structure. So he's just to tell you that he is reassuring the people behind his leadership that he has not yet changed his position. But it doesn't mean that he cannot change. To me, I think we should not look at that tweet to understand it in such a way that he is on his extreme end. The Republic of Cameroon is on his extreme end. No. I think what we should do is that if truly both sides are for a ceasefire, for peace, if truly they have their people at heart, they should forget about their personal or their extreme initiatives, the extreme views they had at first. We are going in for a peace. We have to lose something, because if we think we only stay on our extreme end, want to restore at all costs, we want to, it is one Cameroon and indivisible. We'll fight for 100 years, because you see this crisis has not really had the international attention that it should deserve, because both sides have committed atrocities, and they know that it is a common say that united we stand, divided we fall. I think it is in the spirit of international organization to see us as one Cameroon. But now the problem is maybe which form of state do we give to be able to live together. If we reason in that direction, I think international organizations will take us serious and they will accompany us into this process.
All right, Barrister, we're going to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week, the press review by Immaculate Fugu, and we'll be right back in some few minutes.
The Guardian Post exclaims about the beheading of 2 girls by suspected separatist fighters in Kumba. Another edition of the Guardian Post reports about the new Bafo Paraman ruler inviting God to heal the town of Kumba. The Star, The Sun, and The Advocate writes about the visit of Minister Paul Tassong to the Northwest and Southwest regions to discuss about President Paul Biya's reconstruction plan in the war-torn areas. The Guardian Post and The Horizon doubt if Minister Paul Tassong's mission to reconstruct the war-torn areas will be possible. Even Florence Eposi emerges as the second Limbe female mayor. She succeeds late Rodani Boa at the Limbe Council. The Median and the Post report about the explosion that occurred in the Damas neighborhood in the nation's political capital Yaoundé, injuring 5 persons. The Post Weekender: Cameroon and Equatorial Guinea dumb military might and embrace dialogue.
Thanks for staying with us. Barrister Tamfu, Richard, Foncha said something earlier. He said that the problem can be solved within the national territory. But there are other persons who are thinking that if there must be a serious negotiation that can produce something concrete, it should take place on a neutral ground where everybody will come in with a free mind, with no fear of being arrested and so on. Because somebody was asking the question, but if Field Marshal was brought out of Libya Leman to Yaoundé to take part in national dialogue, and later on there's disagreement, will he be allowed to go back into the bush to go continue the fight, or he will be kept somewhere there in Yaoundé?
I think to me the venue is of no essence. We all know how alternative dispute resolutions mechanism operate. They could decide and tell maybe the separatist leader, okay, that you choose a mediator, La Republic chooses a mediator, and maybe it is supervised by the UN. So be it in Yaoundé or wheresoever, that's not the issue. The problem is both sides cannot sit and they are discussing, because there is supposed to be somebody to mediate the talks or to supervise the talks. And to me, if a body like the United Nations is invited, because the truth about all this saga is because of the United Nations. So if the United Nations is to come and supervise the reconciliation or the talks between these two fractions, I think to me it doesn't matter where we sit or where, be it, if we can handle it it's a Cameroon issue. I don't think that if we decide to,
but in the absence of general amnesty, that would be
the truth is that we cannot
have those who are brought to come inside.
That is why we say, how do you have people like Dr. Ayabacho to come to a discussion table? Obviously you have to take actions like general amnesty supervised by the UN. Marshall said that for him to be invited, it needs to go through a diplomatic and formal way for him, for example, to come down. So I think if we follow all those channels of diplomacy and we do things in the proper way, we can have them. You can't be discussing with Ayotabe while he's still in detention. So
he has to be released.
He has to be released.
He has to be released. All right, Foncha, talking about the presence of a third party in the discussion, is it a prerequisite? Is it an obligatory option? Can't we solve the problems among ourselves? Must we have a third party to come supervise?
Yes, Mr. Babila, thank you very much for that question. The third party is not coming to participate in any national conference to solve Cameroon problem. Cameroon is a sovereign state. The third party, like the United Nations or any major country around the world, United States, England, France, Switzerland, they can be observers to make sure that these talks, whenever is held in Cameroon, these talks are free and transparent without any form of intimidation, and to meet international standards in conflict resolution. And also for this third party to inform the rest of the international community, yes, we went down to Yaoundé, the secessionists, the federalists, and the government. They are talking, and we think that we're going to get to a resolution on this. But there's one thing that we have to understand here. I have already offered the middle ground in this conflict. The secessionists of Mr. Tabe Ayokanku, they are talking about we're going to restore the state of Southern Cameroon. The government is saying Cameroon is one and indivisible. They have held extensive discussions with Cameroonian citizens who are not government officials across the country, especially in the east, the south, and the center, littoral, and north. And we have come to a conclusion by just talking amongst ourselves that we will rather for Cameroon to become one and indivisible federal Cameroon based on our 10 cultural boundaries existing today as 10 provinces. This is not very far away from the decentralization that the government is talking, or the regionalism that for Victor Mukete Emeritus was saying in the hollow chambers of the Cameroon Senate. So there's a third option here. That's the middle ground.
We'll be right back, Marshal, in some few minutes.
This middle ground by allowing every region in that country to have a voice of the direction of this thing. So I've offered that middle ground, and I think that middle ground, if you put it today in the referendum, 80% or 90% of Camerooners will want a 10-state cultural federation in Cameroon. The government knows this. We need to go for a national referendum. But
we need to go for a national referendum, according to Foncha Marshal. We're going to take some interviews now, and we'll be right back in some few minutes.
Coming out of the two regions, we are confident to say that the people are overwhelmingly expecting the plan to unfold, to roll out its different. People are conscious of the fact that the level of suffering has peaked. The level of suffering has attained levels where it can only get better. It can't get worse. This was crystal clear when we talked to the people. And of course, I think even keen observers of the scene, we testify to the fact that the level of bad news that we used to hear is not the same. The frequency of bad news is not the same as it was. The process of building peace and the process of recovery and reconstruction are not mutually exclusive. They can happen simultaneously. Particularly, it's good to note that we are not the first country to go through a violent conflict. Other countries have gone through this before us. Templates exist. Templates built on the experience of other countries who have gone through this kind of situation before us. So we are not inventing. We have done a deep analysis of the actors of the crisis. And of course, alongside, we've looked at the various categories of the beneficiaries of
we are suffering, but it's not too bad now because people are coming small. We don't have money to buy foodstuff. We have children in the house who will be crying for food. There's no money to start up a business.
Things are not easy as this crisis has come and scatters people. People who are frustrated, those who are doing their business, they are not able to cash up. If they even return back, and we pray that let the government do something for this crisis. Let the government really speak, because we are suffering much.
I'm representing Reverend Dr. Lois Ekwe. Notice that the population are gaining ground here in Tombell, but they are facing difficulties. They have little or nothing to eat, reason why she deemed it necessary to bring aid to them. And what we have given them is to boost their morale.
There has been a mass exodus of indigents to other safer regions of the country and has hampered economic growth in this municipality. Many activities stood to a standstill, with some completely abandoned. The socio-cultural infrastructures, even though limited, are dilapidating, as stakeholders cannot access such structures due to fear of the unknown. Schools are yet to commence in this part of the division, as indigents still live in fear. We look forward to a brighter days.
This is Sodiko, behind Ancien Sonnel, where the Sonnel was commercial bank was before. So now this decision we're passing here is very, very, very terrible. Nobody can sleep restfully because you are afraid, you don't know when the rain is going to come. And everywhere, the whole houses, everywhere is filled, overflowed with water.
Yeah, I'm called Mr. Tabongwa Tobias. We are here at Rai, Bonaberi. So how you are seeing there is a lot of water. The problem in this quarter is because people are just building houses without even giving passes where water can even pass. As people can see, there's no way that where the water, there's no drainage at all. And then I just parked the car here in the morning. All is full of water, so we really need help. We need help from government.
Thank you for staying with us. Those were interviews of the week. Barrister, the reconstruction plan, the government is pushing on with the reconstruction plan. Minister Paul Tasson and former Mayor John Donatus have just rounded up a two-week mission to the two Anglophone regions of the country, struggling to pave the way forward for that reconstruction plan, which according to him will fast-track the return to peace and normalcy. What do you think about this idea of reconstruction fast-tracking the return to peace and normalcy? Is it feasible?
The project in itself is salutary, because we all know that this crisis has brought considerable misery in those two regions. You have houses which have been completely burnt. You have public infrastructures which have been burnt. But to me, I think we are putting the cart before the horse, because we cannot actually, for now, say that we can start erecting any structure, for example, say in Bafut, or in those areas where the war is still ongoing. I think we should concentrate our energies, our ideas that we have, in first of all trying to seek for a lasting peace. We make sure that, because imagine that we construct, for example, a hospital in a place which is still very hot in the fighting, and the next day you hear that the separatists have still burnt it down.
All right, Barrister, we are running out of time. Marshal Foncha, you have 30 seconds. What's your take on the reconstruction of the northwest and southwest regions of the country?
Reconstruction, I've already put out a statement out there. And this reconstruction, so I just had an interruption there. Can you hear me? Hello?
Go ahead, we are getting you 5 on 5.
Oh, okay, good. So for the reconstruction, there are several segments of reconstruction. Material construction of bridges, roads, houses, and palaces, I don't think this is the right time. But we can begin with building human capacity, giving microeconomic and educational capacity to our people on the ground first, the ones on the ground, because remember, we have thousands of refugees and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of internally displaced. We must first find a way to start giving our people this capacity, the educational and human capacity first, before we start going into material construction.
All right, we should start with building human capacity first before going to material reconstruction. Marshal, thanks. All right.
We cannot begin the reconstruction with material reconstruction of places that can be torn down or touched or burnt by some of the secessionist fighters.
All right, Marshal Foncha, chairman of the New Africa Coalition Front, joining us from Washington, D.C., United States of America. Thanks so much for your time, Marshal. Barrister, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.
Yes.